Hi, I'm Ben. Thanks for coming along to our Members Day. What we're going to do now is show you a video of some of the cool creatures you found in the pond. The first creature we're going to have a look at is a Daphnia, or a water flea. So under the microscope here, we've got one of these. This is what the water flea looks like zoomed in, but when you zoom out you can see how absolutely tiny they are. That's just held in one droplet of water. Where you can see the flickering on the screen is where its legs are moving. It likes to pull the water through its shell with its legs because it likes to feed on all of the little things floating around in the water. It will feed on tiny bits of leaf, bits of dirt, anything that's floating around in the water. The other absolutely tiny creature that you would have found in the pond is this guy, who is an ostracod. They're crustaceans, just like the water fleas, so that means they're related to crabs and lobsters as well. These ones actually live inside a shell, so although you can only see a black dot, you're seeing the outside of its shell, and at the front there we can just see some of its legs poking out the front. A bit like the water fleas, they like to filter feed as well. So the next one we're going to have a look at is the phantom Mid Larvae. This one is actually what goes around eating all of the water fleas and the ostracods, so it's the next step up in the food chain. These guys get their name because they're so see-through, just like phantoms or ghosts. And we can see all the way down the middle of it is its guts. So that is all of the mushed up water fleas that he ate for breakfast this morning. This next creature is a Mayfly Nymph. You might have found some of these when you were dipping, but they're all very, very tiny at the moment, because as you can probably guess from their name, they have something to do with the month of May. In the month of May, these creatures emerge from the pond as adult mayflies with wings, and then they are alive for only one day as adults. They can fly around, but they don't even have a mouth. All they can do is lay some eggs and start the new generation of mayfly, and then they die. These guys are quite innocent looking. They don't have any big scary mouth parts because they're herbivores, which means they like to eat the plants in the pond. The other quite cool thing about them is these flappy things you can see at the top of the screen. These are actually its gills, and if we zoom in, you can see they've got loads of tiny veins in them. He's got a really long pair of antennae at the front to help find his way around the pond. And the other characteristic thing is those 3 long tails at the back, which they keep even when they're adults. You'll often find lots of weird wormy squirmy things when you're pond dipping, and most of them are going to be fly larvae. The red one is nicknamed as a bloodworm because they have the same chemical in their blood that we have in our blood, and it makes it red, just like for us. At the top of the pond food chain are these guys, and they are dragonfly nymphs. Lots of people don't realise that dragonflies start their lives living under the water looking like this. They don't have any wings, they only get those when they're adults. Dragonfly nymphs are fantastic predators. They've got really cool masks sitting under their chins that I'll show you in a bit. But the other technique they have for catching their prey is to do with their bums. They've got their 3 triangles that you can see on the screen, and they squirt water out of a small hole between those, which works a bit like a jet-propelled fart, and it helps them squirt their way across the pond to catch up to the animal that they want to eat. Dragonflies can spend up to 7 years looking like this under the water, and they grow by shedding their skin, a little bit like a snake does. So they will shed their skin every so often, get a bit bigger, shed it again, get a bit bigger, shed it again, right up until they're ready to become adults and leave the pond. What I have here is the final molt of a dragonfly's skin that it leaves behind when it does leave the pond. I'll just pop it under the microscope now. So this is a hollow skin. If I can zoom in, you can even see all the details of the wings themselves before it inflated them. You can really see how big their eyes are when they're like this. They're absolutely massive compound eyes to help them find their prey. Now let me show you that mask I told you about before. It's much easier to look at it on these ones than on the alive ones. So let me just flip him over. And you can see underneath his chin is almost like a whole extra arm. This whole appendage here, he can use it like a telescopic arm to shoot forward through the pond, and the jaws on the end of it will grab onto the poor animal that it's trying to catch, and then it will pull it back towards the dragonfly's mouth, ready for lunch. So we keep using these words, nymphs and larvae, but what are we actually talking about? Nymphs are just like the dragonfly we just saw, and that means they just shed their skin to get bigger, and they don't really look too different as an adult than they do as young ones. However, a larvae is when something completely transforms, undergoing metamorphosis. Just like in the hungry caterpillar, he goes into his cocoon, undergoes metamorphosis, melts down into bug soup, and comes out looking completely different. This guy is going to melt himself down in a cocoon as well, and you'll never guess what he's going to become. He's going to become a beetle. Lots of beetles live under the water as well. There's over 400,000 kinds of beetle in the world, and quite a lot of them look like this, living in ponds. They swim around with hairy back legs to help them push more water out the way, just like you wearing flippers. And what you can see if you look at him is that he has a bubble right on the end of his bottom. That is because these guys are also like scuba divers. They take the bubble of air under the water with them to breathe, and they come back up to the surface to get a new bubble when they need more air. Another one of the top predators in the pond is the greater water boatman. This guy is absolutely vicious. You can see why he gets his name. He's got two long pairs of legs, just like the oars of the boat, and the body of it is quite boat-shaped as well. So he will use those back legs with their long hairs, just like the beetles did, to help push the water out the way and swim really, really quickly. But what are those other legs at the front doing? Let's have a look. If we zoom in, you can see his four front legs all have rather nasty looking hooks on the end of them, and those are because when it catches up to its prey, it will wrap those legs round and stab in the hooks so it can't escape. And then it gets even worse. You can see if we look really closely, he's got a straw for a mouth, and that beak just right there in the middle is what it will then stab into the poor animal, squirt in some juices to break it down and digest it, and then go and slurp its guts out. So these guys are absolutely not the one to mess with. So that straw is part of what makes this guy a bug. We saw a beetle before with their straight line down the back of their wing case. They have pincers to eat their prey with, whereas true bugs, like this guy, have straws for mouths, and their wings look more like a crossed over X or Y on their back. And last but not least, let's have a look at one of our newts. Everything we've seen so far is an invertebrate, which means that they don't have a backbone. But this guy is a vertebrate, just like us. So this is a Newt Eft, or a young newt, and this is what they look like when they first are born and live in the pond. They have those weird red feathery things on their cheeks, which are actually their gills, and is how they breathe. If we zoom in on them, you can see the red colour actually comes from all the blood that's flowing around in them, helping it to pick up the oxygen from the water. We can zoom in so far that you can actually see the blood cells moving around inside the gills of the newt.